them in turn now, one by one. To explain the principles in which we believe, it'll be necessary to divide them into 4 categories: political, economic, social, and religious. Now, as far as our political principles are concerned, usually we're described as conservatives. But the debate, or the dialogue as it's now called, is not between conservatives and liberals. It goes back in history long before those words were ever invented. The opposing points of view properly are identified as individualism versus collectivism, and their champions are called individualists and collectivists. Now, the members of the John Birch Society consider themselves to be individualists, and here are the differences between the two as we see them. First of all, the individualist believes that the rights of the individual must not be obliterated by the desires of the collective or the group. The collectivist, on the other hand, believes that the group is more important than the single person within it, and that the individual must be sacrificed, if necessary, for the greater good of the greater number. The individualist believes that with rights come responsibilities. And since we insist on individual rights, therefore we accept the principle of individual responsibility rather than group responsibility. We believe that every man has a personal and direct responsibility to provide first for himself, next for his family, and then for those outside his family who may be in need. The collectivist, on the other hand, declares that the individual is not personally responsible for charity, for raising his own children, providing for his aging parents, or even providing for himself, for that matter. This is a group function of the state, of government itself. As a matter of fact, this is always one sure way to spot who is an individualist and who is a collectivist. The individualist wants to be free to do it himself. The collectivist wants the government to do it for him. He's enamored by government. He idolizes government. He has a fixation on government as the ultimate group mechanism to solve all problems. Now, the reason is because government is the one group that can legally force everyone to participate. It has the power of taxation, backed by jails and force of arms, if necessary, to compel everyone to fall in line. And this leads to the third difference between the two groups. Simply stated, the individualist believes in freedom. The collectivist believes in compulsion. Now, let me give a few illustrations. As stated a moment ago, we believe that every man has a personal responsibility to provide for himself, if he can, and for his dependents. This means that routinely, we should all set aside a portion of our current earnings for the inevitability of unemployment through sickness, accident, or retirement. But as individualists, we also believe that we should be free not to do this if for whatever reason we prefer to act in some other manner. If we wish to live to the full extent of our income and plan to depend on our children or other relatives in our old age, or if we choose to take our chances on a greater income in later years, or even if we choose consciously to fall back on charity as a way of life, for whatever reason, we believe that a person should be free to choose his own course. We have no right to force him to comply with our ideas of what he should do. Now, by contrast, the collectivist says that since some people don't have the brains or the willpower or the desire to save on their own, let us pass a law and use the power of government to force them. There must not be freedom of choice in this matter, otherwise there will be many who do not do what we know they should do. This same contrast can be seen in the area of charity. We believe that every man has a personal responsibility to be generous to those in need. But as individualists, we also believe that a man should be free not to be charitable if he doesn't want to. If he prefers to give to a different charity than the one we urge on him, if he prefers to give a smaller amount than what we think he should give, or if he prefers not to give at all, we don't believe we have any right to gang up on him and force him either directly by mob violence or indirectly by the ballot box. In either case, the principle is the same. It's called stealing. True charity is the voluntary giving of your own money. Government charity is the giving of someone else's money, which of course is why it's so popular. And so the individualist believes that every man must be free in this matter to act or not to act as he sees fit. The collectivist believes just the reverse. Because there are some who will not be charitable as we think they should be, let us pass a law and use government to force them. Let's not call it stealing, though. Let's call it welfare. And so it goes on almost every conceivable issue in which the end result generally is conceded to be desirable. As individualists, we believe in freedom of choice. The collectivist inevitably turns to the coercion of government force. Now, we hear a lot of talk today about right-wingers, left-wingers, extremists, and moderates. So let's turn now to the question of where the John Birch Society stands in the political spectrum. The political spectrum concept, if it has any meaning at all, is a measurement scale showing all the variations in government, ranging from 0 at one end to 100% at the other. Now, the extremists at the 0 end would be those who advocate no government at all, the anarchists. The extremists at the other end would be those who advocate total government. And who are they? Well, the communists, of course, but also the Nazis, the fascists, and any others, no matter what they may call themselves. If they advocate total government control over the people, they are all, by definition, totalitarians. Communism and Nazism are not opposites. Call it right or left, it makes no difference. They're both at the same totalitarian end of the political spectrum. But where does the John Birch Society fit into this picture? Aren't we supposed to be the extremists? That's what we hear constantly. Well, the truth of the matter is, we turn out to be the real middle of the roaders. Not that we think that's any particular virtue in itself, but we are just as opposed to the extreme of anarchy as we are to the extreme of totalitarianism. As members of the John Birch Society, we recognize that government is absolutely necessary for an orderly society. But following the dictum that government, like fire, is both beneficial and dangerous, we believe in the concept of limited government. And we believe that the constitutional republic created by our founding fathers is the best form of limited government that has yet been devised by man. Now, to understand why we feel this way, it'll be necessary to define the word republic and to point out the differences between a republic and a democracy. Now, democracy is a form of government based upon the principle of majority rule, period, end of discussion. Now, that's not very complicated. Majority rule. It's easy to understand, easy to sell to the masses, and, I might add, deadly. For example, what would you call a lynch mob? That's majority rule. There's only one dissenting vote, and he's at the end of the rope. Now, that's pure democracy in action. But wait a minute, you say. The majority should rule, yes, but not to the extent of destroying the rights of the minority. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we are no longer describing a democracy. We are speaking of a republic. A republic is a limited democracy. It's a form of government based upon the principle of limited majority rule. Limited so that the minority, even a minority of one, can be protected against the whims and passions of the majority. And how do you protect the minority from the majority? You write down a set of rules on a piece of paper. You say, this we can do, that we cannot. At the top of the paper, you write the word Constitution. And then everyone agrees to follow the rules no matter what the temptation. And when you're finished, you've created a constitutional republic. Notice that the entire function of our Bill of Rights is to spell out in detail the many ways in which the majority, acting through government, must not be allowed to infringe on the rights of the minority. The First Amendment sets the pace with the words, Congress shall pass no law. And then the document proceeds to explain that Congress, even though it expresses the will of the majority, shall not deny the minority the right of free exercise of religion, freedom of speech, peaceful assembly, the right to bear arms, and others. Congress shall not. The majority shall not. This is the meaning of a republic. And it didn't just happen that way accidentally. Our founding fathers knew exactly what they were doing. Remember that interesting exchange of letters between Thomas Jefferson and a friend who had criticized him for being distrustful of men with political power? Using the same argument we so often hear today, the friend asked, "Have you no faith in the men we elect? Have you no confidence in our government?" And remember that beautiful reply. Jefferson said, "Confidence is everywhere the parents of despotism. In questions of power, let no more be heard of confidence in man, but bind him down from mischief by the chains of the Constitution." And there, in a single phrase, is the best summary you'll ever find of a republic. Binding men down from mischief by the chains of the Constitution. And this is the concept of limited government in which the members of the John Birch Society believe.